Hey folks, welcome back to the Mac and Mike Show. I'm the handsome, intelligent, good-looking Mac, and he is Mike. So Mike and I got together. Today is the birthday of America. It's July 4th, and thus my red, white, and blue motif. And of course, Mike, because he's Sergeant Death, he doesn't have red, white, and blue. He just has black, which is perfect for Sergeant Death. Although he's not Sergeant Death anymore. He's really less death, more
Life.
Christian. So, anyways, we got together today, and we went out, got some lunch. We chatted for a while, and Mike said to me, as during our conversation, he said, "That's the smartest thing you've ever heard. I'm going to make that your quote." And what I said, I didn't even realize I was saying it when I said it was. What did I say, Mike? How are you supposed to make informed decision if you don't have the truth?
The truth again.
And I say incredibly smart, intelligent shit like that all the time, but this was one that Mike caught and decided he would make that one of my. I think he's going to put an epitaph on my tombstone. But what I was talking about was, I asked Mike. I said, "What do you think of the BBB? The big beautiful bill?" And we chatted about that for a little bit, and I said I wasn't for it, and I can explain that if we want to get into that. I'm not sure we do, but. What I said was, did you listen to Hakeem Jeffries speak? And Mike is not a big Hakeem Jeffries fan. And I repeated from the Jeffries speech that he said that 10,000 people a year were going to die because of this bill. And that's when I came out with the, because what I said was, there are people who are going to believe that. I do not believe 10,000 people a year will die because of the big beautiful bill. But Hakeem Jeffries, who is the minority leader in the House of Representatives of the United States, said that loudly, repeated it multiple times, and there are people who are going to believe it. And my point to Mike was, how can we make informed decisions when we have things like that hanging in the air that many people will believe? And that's when Mike just stroked my ego a little bit, and he said, "That's a great quote. We're gonna have to remember that one. Write it down somewhere."
Yeah, it's true, and we've talked about the truth so many times before, and it bleeds back into that. So I think it's today because we have 24. I keep harping on this. We have 24-hour news stations, and we have completely biased stations, so that you can't get to the truth. I mean, even if you're listening to a conservative news network, you're getting their bias, or if you're listening to the liberals, you're getting theirs. And I make the argument that if you're listening to something like Fox, you're getting it pretty much as close to the centrist as you can, although it skews right. But yeah, I can't bear stupidity. I don't know how many times we've heard, this is going to run Granny off the cliff. This is going to happen. Look, the thing about the big beautiful bill to me is, if the Republicans have made a huge mistake, and Trump, and if this doesn't work out, they're going to get booted out of office. I mean, next election, that as soon as the impact is felt, if the left is correct, then they should be okay with us making that mistake, because they will then return to power. It's kind of like what happened. Trump even admitted the other day, maybe it's good that Joe Biden won the election. Maybe even it's a good thing if this communist gets elected mayor of New York City, because sometimes people need to suffer in reality, and they don't just hear it as rhetoric on the news, but it impacts their lives, and then things swing back the other way. So, yeah, I don't know.
Well, what was one of the ancillary outcomes of this passage of this bill? The first thing is that, who do you believe? Who's right? The CBO came out with some numbers, said this is what's going to happen if this bill passes, the Congressional Budget Office. But you can't trust the Congressional Budget Office anymore, because they've been more wrong than they've been right over these several years. And two people who I have some admiration for, Donald Trump and Elon Musk, are on different sides of this argument. Elon Musk said adding $4.1 or $4.2 trillion to our deficit, our national debt, is a ridiculous thing to do for our children and grandchildren. And the president, President Trump, said, "Well, give me a chance to get this economy going, and we will generate enough revenue to overcome the deficit, and we will do so naturally with a outstanding and a very powerful economy that will raise more money than if we didn't do this." And I don't know who's telling the truth, and maybe we won't ever know who's telling the truth, and maybe they're both telling a little bit of the truth. Maybe Trump can get the economy going so that it's not a $4.1 trillion deficit addition to our national debt. But maybe Elon Musk is right. But what is the thing that Elon Musk said after that?
I don't know.
He's thinking about starting his own political party.
That, yeah.
Right? The American Party, I think.
Yeah.
The America Party.
Not a good idea.
And, well, the last time it was done, see, people who ignore history are doomed to repeat it, right? Ross Perot with the Patriot Party in the early 90s, he got on all these ballots. He ran for president, and, with Admiral what's-his-name, who am I and why am I here?
Yeah.
What Perot did, not intentionally, I don't believe he did it intentionally, but the outcome of him starting the Patriot Party was he took enough votes away from Bush, because that was the vote that he was splitting, the conservative, the Republican vote, and it ended up getting Bill Clinton elected as president, which wasn't necessarily a good thing for our country. No. So what happens if Elon Musk decides to do this and he starts primarying many of these Republican members of Congress, House of Representatives, and Senate? Is that a good thing? Does that turn out to be a good thing? Does it somehow weaken the Republican Party to where the Democrats take control again? And the one thing I do know is that I look at the Democratic platform and I look at the people who represent the Democratic Party today, and I don't have a place there. I don't fit in there.
No, I don't think many people do. I think the Democrat Party will be years and years trying to come back from their foibles of the past. They're spending on... Both parties now spend a lot of money. I mean, that's one of Elon Musk's thing. And the Republicans spend it on the military generally, and the Democrats on social issues and, quote, imaginary Green New Deals, which Doge uncovered to be a lot of grift and, payoffs to different people. So if $1 billion goes to something, till it gets down to the actual fund where it's supposed to go, so many contractors and others have been paid off, like $10 million out of $1 billion gets to the cause. So what the answers are, I don't know. Trump has been right about so many things so far that I'm tending to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Trump is having a good run.
Real good run.
I mean, there's not much that has gone wrong in his first 6 months.
Nothing, has there? I don't know if anything's gone
wrong. I don't know that he missed any of them. Unless you count Ukraine. I don't think the Ukraine war is going so well.
No.
But I saw this thing the other day where they're talking about 155 millimeter artillery shells.
Yeah.
And they said Ukraine is expending 1,000 of them a month or 10,000 a month or some shit like that. I mean, just a lot of shells, more than we make. So the buildup or the storage of artillery shells that we had is depleted. So the United States Army doesn't have what it needs to fight its battles. And who was it that just there was some money or some things that they wanted to send to Ukraine, and some member of the Congress stepped up and said, no, we can't send it to Ukraine because we need that as a stockpile in case Taiwan
kicks off. Yeah.
We live in a dangerous world, Mike. We live in a dangerous world, and if you think that the crippling of Iran's nuclear program made us safer, I think that's a wrong arrival of the outcome. I think that without their own nuclear program, they are more dangerous because there are nations out there, the North Koreans for an example, the Pakistanis for another, who are willing to sell nuclear weapons for hard cash. Yeah. And we know that the Iranians have some hard cash. You don't need to build one if you can buy one.
Yeah, and I don't think the Iranian thing is over. I mean, I know there's a ceasefire. I just think it's coming to the point where it's going to come to a head again. They're being recalcitrant. They're not, cooperating. And we're going to be left again with no choice. And if Russia, North Korea, any of these other countries move nuclear weapons around the world, we're pretty darn good at sensing that. So I have a real strong feeling if somebody like Trump's in charge or the Israelis get wind of it, those nuclear weapons are going to be hit. So they better make sure that they're not armed at the time that they're hit, or they're going to have a nuclear detonation on their own soil.
Well, I don't know if you saw this, but sometime over the past 10 days, the defense minister of the nation of Saudi Arabia visited the White House. Did you hear about this?
No.
No, yeah. And the question, it wasn't highly publicized. I caught a snippet of it on one of the websites that I review, military wise, and it didn't sit well with me. Why would the defense minister of Saudi Arabia make a visit to the United States of America and Donald Trump was in the meeting, quote unquote, supposedly in the meeting? Because that speaks of some conversation at a very, very high level. Mm-hmm. Now, we know that the Saudis and the Iranians do not get along at all. It's the difference between the Shia and the Sunni Muslim population. But what reason would there be for the Saudi defense? It's one thing if it's the king, right?
Yeah,
that could be
that's
a state
diplomatic,
visit, and we're going to sit down and have margaritas, and we're going to talk about stuff. We're going to talk about races and the
oil,
horse
and
racing,
golf,
yeah. But when it's a Saudi defense minister, it kind of indicates a working meeting for some purpose. You know what I mean? And I just think it's interesting, and I don't know what it means, but it means to me that something at a high level of some importance, probably involving the Iranians, is being discussed. I don't know. I just, you know what I pray for, Mike? I pray that my children and grandchildren have an opportunity to live a long and prosperous life. And now my great-grandchildren,
Yeah, well, same here, obviously. And they're going to probably live a lot longer than us, too, with all the breakthroughs. Just as a side note, I heard about 10 years they're going to have the injection where if we live that long, they'll be able to make us young again with several injections. That'd be nice. But
I don't know, Mike.
Yeah, if you live a long life in this kind of world that's so topsy-turvy, do you really want to be here?
I did hear that they're projecting in the relatively near future lifespan for an average, human being maybe being as high as 140 years old.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not sure I want to live that long. I know I don't want to live that long with the health and medical limitations that I have now.
Oh, right. Well, that's a given. They'll have to.
I mean, if they could make me be 40 years old for the rest of my life, for 140 years, that'd be fine.
Yeah.
But this being 70 shit and living to 140, no, thank you.
No.
Yeah.
So I don't know where to take the conversation exactly.
What's funny, Mike?
What?
The older I get, the more stupid shit happens to me, right? Like when I'm in my 20s or 30s, I'm holding on to something. Doesn't matter what it is: piece of paper, pencil, pen, phone, all these kinds of things you hold in your hand. Now that I'm nearing 70, like I'm holding it in my hand, and all of a sudden it's not there anymore.
Yeah. Dropsies.
It's just gone.
Yep.
And I look around on the floor till I find it. And you know what the first thing that goes through my head is?
Yeah. Do you just want to leave it there?
Yeah. My first thing is, how badly do I need that?
Yeah.
Do I really need to bend down and pick that up?
Time to get one of those claw things,
Well, my buddy did that. My buddy told me he's got all these claw things. And for me, the problem is getting down and getting back up,
Right.
Like, again, when people who are young don't appreciate this. When you're 30, you just bend over and pick it up. Or you go down to one knee and pop right back up. You don't do that when you're past 60. You don't do that anymore.
Oh, you want to get on another side issue?
What's that?
So, our friend Brent, we got to get him on here. And I've been going back and forth with him by text over the last week. He's a conspiracy theorist, and he's even a 9/11 truther. And we started going back and forth on this whole subject. And I think I finally got him to admit that he said, "You're right." To me, he said, "You're right."
Wow.
That's amazing. So when it comes to that kind of stuff, here we're back to the subject of truth again, because it's conspiracy theory versus truth. And of course, the problem is the media and the government and politicians lie to us so much that you start to become jaded, and then you want to believe anything except what they say as truth. So let's go back to the 9/11 thing. The first thing is it was a missile that hit the Pentagon. Remember that? And it was because Donald Rumsfeld the day before said they couldn't track $2 trillion worth of expenditures. Well, I pointed out, number one, Rumsfeld was in the damn building when it was hit, right? Number two, the records he was talking about had been a problem for years, and ever since the 1973, 74 fire at the Pentagon, they backed up records everywhere. So if there were financial records that they were trying to hide, they're backed up anyway, so it wouldn't matter. The second thing is it's a missile. It's not a plane, it's a missile that hit the Pentagon. Well, I said, Brent, you know what? You're going to have to do a couple things. You're going to have to, somehow get rid of the hundreds of eyewitnesses, because this happens around 9:30 in the morning, 9:45, and the roads are just jam-packed around Washington, D.C., and there's hundreds and hundreds of people eyewitnessing this thing, and everyone says it's an airplane. Nobody says it's a missile. And then you have part of the fuselage that there's one picture that was released years later. Here it is sitting on the grass. It's got the letter A on it from the TWA. But the thing that got him, here's what got him. And maybe this will help some of you folks out there trying to work with the truthers. What are you going to say about the loved ones that were lost?
Yeah.
There were people calling from the airplanes, not just the ones that hit,
Yep.
Pennsylvania and New York, but
Yep.
the Pentagon too. So you're going to tell me all these people that lost hundreds of loved ones are all lying
Yeah.
that this was actually a missile that hit the Pentagon. Then you come to the World Trade Center thing. Their argument is, okay, the buildings were detonated so that they would collapse. My question to him was, okay, let's analyze that. In the early 1990s, the blind sheikh tried to bomb the World Trade Centers from the garages below ground.
Mm-hmm.
That building is one of the most secure in the world. They had explosive detection systems everywhere like we had in the military. There's no way you're going to move explosives into the World Trade Center. Number two, what would have it mattered? After those two planes hit, those buildings would have had to have been brought down anyway, right?
Yeah.
You can't just let them sit there in the sky with airplanes stuck in them. So what would be the purpose of detonating the buildings? They would have had to have been brought down regardless. So,
Well, my brother hit me with one in the same vein a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about the movie, the Apollo 13. Do you remember Apollo 13 where
Yeah.
they had the problem in Houston? We have a problem.
usually we have a problem.
And he was talking about how we were so lucky to get those astronauts back, and just by the skin of our teeth, and some of the craziest, workarounds and stupid things that they did. And he was talking about that whole episode as if it were gospel, and despite ourselves, we were able to save our. And then, like a week or two later, he's telling me how the America never landed on the moon.
Oh.
And I'm saying to him, I said, how quickly you are to accept that we screwed up everything and almost lost the Apollo 13 astronauts. But you're willing to sit there and say there's no real proof that we landed on the moon.
Yeah.
I said, I don't know if this is accurate or not, but my opinion is that we want to disregard the moon landing because that was America's success.
Yeah.
And we want to wallow in this near disaster of Apollo 13 as if America can't get out of its own way. I said, I think what we're talking about here is two different ideological differences of individuals who want America to be viewed in a bad light. Not in a positive light, but in a negative light. And I said, there's, you can see the moon, the stuff that we left on the moon. You can see it's still there.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you would anticipate that they would be able to fake those pictures, And those are the kinds of things, again, my comment, how are we supposed to make informed decisions if we don't know the truth?
Mm-hmm.
And, in order to get to the truth, maybe you have to go to some weird places, some off the wall places. Like the story about the Saudi defense minister having a meeting with Trump in the White House. That one's, I mean, again, I don't know. Try Googling it, see if it comes up. But the website that I got it from is one that I trust, and there was no explanation given for why that would be there, why he would be there, and it just seems to me really odd. Like there's something else Americans should know about that's going on in the Middle East.
Well, that could leave it open to conspiracy theories coming forward. But I want to get back to the moon thing just for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, one of the biggest things I've dealt with is my friend Brent and Joe and another guy they're all sort of got their own conspiracy theories. The moon thing is so obvious to me. The one that I think I convinced most people with the counter argument: if we didn't land on the moon, why didn't the Russians ever say we didn't land on the moon? They were our chief adversary at the time, the Soviet Union. Why did the Chinese never make the accusation that America didn't land on the moon?
Right.
None of our enemies ever made that accusation. That accusation only came from inside our own country. So, I mean, others picked up on it later, but it originated here in America. It never originated. And to this day, there's never been any adversary who has ever claimed that we didn't land on the moon. So go figure.
Well, I really do believe there are people who hate America, and a lot of people who live in America who hate America. A couple of weeks ago, I don't even remember what it was associated with, but do you remember the No Kings protest?
Oh, yeah. Duh.
Well, I would just say today is the 249th anniversary of
No Kings. Yeah.
And that was for real. We
Yeah.
had a king then, and there was taxation without representation, and there was abuse of the colonies. And I think it's amazing that America is 249 years old, and beginning tomorrow on its 250th birthday.
We're heading up towards the 250th. Yeah.
Pretty amazing, isn't it? How many great civilizations lasted 250 years?
Well, a number did, that's around the time when they start falling apart, is around the 250 to 300 year period, I think. You're thinking of Rome, you're thinking of ancient Greece, Egypt, then the Persian Empire, so yeah, this is about the breaking point, I think, is anywhere from 250 to 300 years. But remember, oftentimes it's a slow collapse. It's not all of a sudden that the hordes overwhelmed Rome. They started to, slowly invade, and there were incursions and then retreats, and over 100 years the empire finally collapsed. But
can you imagine, you talked about Rome and Greece and various kinds of, can you imagine if we had organizations, let's say states, that mirrored the typical world of the ancient world? Like, can you imagine if the state of Minnesota was like Sparta? Where all kids are taken out at 7 years old and taught how to be warriors. Or they die.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine the kind of craziness that would be going on in the Athens or Romans? If they behaved in a certain way, and California was all like Rome, and just, can you imagine how weird that would be?
Yeah.
Hannibal, right? Let's get Hannibal and his army started again.
Bring the elephants, right?
Yeah.
Up over the Alps.
Yep. So, I think it's interesting, Mike, that we live in a time where we arrest people for January 6th incursions into the Capitol, and then we have people protesting because we're going to put murderers and rapists who are here in this country illegally into the alligator Alcatraz. It's kind of like it's backwards, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
Aren't we protesting the wrong things?
Yeah, we never consider the victim. Well, the left never considers the victim. They see the victim as the perpetrator, So the illegal immigrant who rapes a child or kidnaps somebody or moves drugs, they're the victim because they were forced into it because of the circumstances. But they don't consider the poor woman that was raped, the child that was molested, the woman or man who was murdered, or the drunk driver that killed a girl, or the schools being overcrowded and your kids not being able to learn and nobody speaking English, and our emergency rooms and doctors being overwhelmed, and Americans not being able to receive the benefits that they should, because now we're giving it away to murderers and rapists and gang members. Not all of them, but enough of them that it makes you think, well, what the hell are we doing here?
Who was it that first coined the phrase "follow the money"? Was that from the Watergate scandal?
It's a long time ago. I think it predates that, but it's a truism for sure.
The reason why I bring that up is that I don't know how it came to my mind today, but somewhere I heard that Planned Parenthood was encouraging men to have tests for cervical cancer.
That was on the news. That was on the Gutfeld show. And the way Gutfeld works is that part is true. The first part he says, and the second part is a joke. But yes, I guess they're actually doing that. We'll have to grok that and see if it's true.
But here's the question that I have for you, Mike. Again, as you would agree, and many friends and acquaintances I have, I'm not the brightest guy to stand upright and speak. But in order to check for cervical cancer, wouldn't one of the prerequisites be that you have a cervix?
You would think.
I mean, again, logic oftentimes is the bane of my existence. But isn't that really? I mean, isn't that Planned Parenthood just? I mean, if they get a man to come in and take a cervical cancer test. By the way, I'm going to go out on a limb. I don't think they actually have to send any samples for testing, because I'm gonna pretty well guess that a man's cervical cancer test is going to come back negative.
Yeah.
So isn't that just another way to get money out of the federal government for their?
Yeah, I don't know, and I have a feeling that if we grok this thing, it's not exactly true. It's being misrepresented. I could do that right now if you want me to, but that's the thing Mac knows that I do. In the middle of our conversations, I'll hear something. I'll go, maybe that's not true. Let's grok it right here, right now, because I want to know the truth right away.
Okay, you grok it, and I'll talk for a minute.
Well,
see, the point is, Mike, that it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. Because going back to the conversation we had earlier today, in order to make informed decisions, we have to know the truth. See, when you hear something like Planned Parenthood is asking men to get tests for cervical cancer, it's either true or not true. Right. I'm going to go out on a limb and say it is true, because I believe that that's entirely possible for the woke people to make that request. But if it's true, it's a money scam. If it's not true, I'd be willing to wager there's a significant number of people that believe it's possible. So whether it's true or untrue is really not important to me. What's important to me is that it was said out loud, and there's people going to be on both sides of that debate as to whether or not it's right or wrong.
Okay, so here's the answer. Planned Parenthood of Southern New England sparked controversy by urging trans men to get screened during Men's Health Month, emphasizing that trans men are men but still need these screenings due to their biological anatomy. I don't know if
so a woman who's transitioning to a man still needs to get
a man transitioning to a woman.
Well, listen, a man transitioning to a woman doesn't have a cervix, doesn't need to have a cervical cancer test.
No, but I guess they can get cancer inside the cavity that they create.
I think that's more weird than I want to talk about.
Yeah, don't want to go down that rabbit hole too far. But when you
notice you use the term rabbit hole.
Rabbit hole, yeah. It's like Pooh Detective on Gutfeld. So you said something earlier.
I say a lot of stupid things.
Yeah, but gosh, what in the heck was it? It slipped my mind. There you go. That's the old age. I'm looking something up, trying to listen to you.
I'm sure it was intelligent and erudite that anything that I say would certainly fall in that category.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry I lost it. I'm not even going to try and find that file drawer to open it.
You know what's weird talking about file drawers? Why is it that I remember songs from like 50 years ago and I don't remember what I did yesterday?
Yeah, that's part of it, the long-term versus short-term memory, right?
No, but here's the other part. Like, my brother asked me something weird about Australia, and I'll give him the answer. And he says, I can't believe you knew that. I can't believe I knew it either.
Right.
Why did I save that particular bit of information in those file drawers up there?
I don't know. That's the Jeopardy guys. You know, they could file all these things away and put it in the back of their mind somewhere.
Doesn't
and
the
draw
world
it out.
miss Alex Trebek? Talking about Jeopardy, wasn't the world a better place with Alex Trebek in it?
I would have thought so. His memory from my youth. He was around forever.
My mom used to watch Jeopardy every evening.
Mm-hmm.
And oft times I would go over and sit with her when it came on at 7 o'clock, and we would compete against one another to see who would get the most answers right. And inevitably, my son would win because my son is smarter than both of us. But at any rate, I don't know, Mike. Did we talk about anything important in this session?
Not really.
Was it a worthwhile session?
Probably for us anyway.
Hey,
This is about us anyway. I hope
we're-
you guys know that.
we're-
This is not about you. This is about two old guys venting.
Don't forget the veteran part.
Two old veterans
with a particular. Most veterans look at the world a certain way. Not universally true, but.
No.
So I guess we should probably end this, right, Mike?
I guess so.
How we usually end it?
Mac and Mike.
Out.